Hey, what is going on here?
Miss Simpson. And here's your briefcase.
Have you ever wondered what really happened once the Saved by the Bell cameras stopped rolling? We grew up with the Bayside gang believing in everlasting friendships and harmless pranks. But the reality of Hollywood was never that simple. From shocking aesthetic whitewashing and the tangled web of teenage cast romances to dark original scripts hidden by the network for decades. Today, let's journey back to the late 80s to uncover the strange, hilarious, and sometimes downright bizarre secrets hidden behind the scenes of Saved by the Bell. 20. The most over the top. I'm so excited scene. The original script was much darker. You likely still remember the image of Jessie Spano with her signature frizzy hair, a face full of panic and trembling hands clutching a bottle of pills in her bedroom. It is the moment she screams the lyrics to "I'm so excited," while collapsing in tears, a scene etched into the memories of millions of 90s kids as a classic lesson on pressure. However, few know that behind those exaggerated, almost comical expressions lay a much darker original script. Initially, the writers wanted Jessie to actually fall into an amphetamine addiction to create a direct, shocking educational message about drug abuse in schools. But that harsh reality was rejected by NBC, fearing it was too heavy for a Saturday morning program. The last-minute switch to caffeine pills inadvertently created a satirical paradox. Actress Elizabeth Berkley was asked to perform with all the agony and desperation of a heavy drug addict, but the cause was merely common alertness pills. This massive gap between the performance and the plot turned a planned tragedy into a legendary comedic moment. Meme. 19. The Zack Morris is Trash series flips the script on Zack. The image of Zack Morris holding his timeout gesture, freezing the world to turn and speak directly to the audience, became the ultimate symbol of cool at Bayside High. In the eyes of a child back then, every time Zack flashed a confident smile or a mischievous wink, we held our breath waiting for his next genius plan. However, looking back at those frames through the eyes of an adult, the Zack Morris is Trash series has acted as a cold wake-up call. Actions once viewed as clever pranks now reveal themselves as frighteningly manipulative and selfish. We realize with a shock that our childhood idol once secretly sold photos of his friends in swimsuits and was willing to sabotage others' happiness just to satisfy his own ego. This unmasking wasn't just an internet joke. It even influenced the 2020 reboot by portraying Zack as an ambitious yet hollow politician. 18. Gosselaar dated the entire female cast. Whenever we looked at those picture-perfect couples on the Bayside screen, we felt a genuine romantic energy radiating from the glances and smiles they shared. Perhaps that natural chemistry is exactly what made Saved by the Bell so magnetic. However, behind the lens, reality was more sitcom than the script itself, as Mark-Paul Gosselaar actually dated almost the entire lead female cast. Mornings that began with romantic scenes often took place in the suffocating atmosphere of real-life breakups as Mark moved through relationships with Elizabeth Berkley, Lark Voorhees, and finally Tiffani Thiessen. Those teen actors worked incredibly hard to prevent their personal feelings from shattering the show's wholesome atmosphere. The audience of the past only saw sweet kisses, never knowing that behind the scenes were tense mediation meetings led by the producers. 17. Zack's brick phone was pricier than a car. I remember watching Saved by the Bell on a black and white TV and laughing every time Zack pulled out his colossal brick-like phone. I always thought it was just a silly prop, but as I grew older, I learned it was actually a Motorola Dynataxi, which cost nearly $4,000 in 1990, more expensive than a used car at the time. Yet Zack treated it like a toy. Once he stood in the middle of the schoolyard calling, "Hi, yeah, one cheese pizza." Deliver it fast? Kelly walked by and asked Zack, who uses a phone that big, to order food. Zack grinned because I'm Zack Morris. Screech, watching from the side, held his head. Oh my god, that thing cost a year of my tuition. Slater shook his head. You're rich in the weirdest way. There was even a scene where Mr. Belding grabbed the phone and yelled, "Zack, do you know how long I'd have to work to afford this?" Zack just shrugged a, "My parents took care of it, sir." One crew member recalled, "We borrowed the phone thinking it'd just be a funny prop for Zack. We didn't expect it to become a decade-defining symbol." Looking back, it wasn't just a prop. It was the perfect representation of the randomly rich kid the show never bothered to explain. 16. Zack and Slater. from rivals to best friends. As a kid, I saw Zack and Slater as the classic bicker-then-bond duo, a destined dynamic in teen sitcoms. But the truth is, they were originally written as rivals, a long-running battle to win Kelly's heart. However, when Mark Paul Gosselaar and Mario Lopez started filming, their chemistry was unexpectedly great. A writer shared, "We watched how those two kids joked around and said, 'No, these two can't be enemies.' During a test scene where they were supposed to argue, Slater blurted out, 'Zack, stop being mad, want to go shoot some hoops?' And Zack immediately replied, 'Yeah, let's go.' The entire crew burst out laughing. The director simply said, 'Rewrite it. These two have to be best friends.' When Mario Lopez found out he wouldn't be Zack's rival anymore, he exclaimed, 'That means I don't have to do all those jealous boyfriend scenes anymore.' Mark laughed, 'I'd rather collaborate than compete.' Thanks to that decision, 90s TV gained one of its most iconic friendships, a mischievous pretty boy and a muscular athlete complementing each other far better than the original plan. And this was just one of the many changes that helped Saved by the Bell become a cultural touchstone. 15. Mr. Belding was actually a creep. As a kid watching Saved by the Bell, I always thought Mr. Belding was the fun-loving principal everyone wished they had. Back then, just hearing him say, 'Hey, hey, hey, what is going on here?' was enough to reassure us that all problems would be solved. But watching it as an adult, many of his actions suddenly seem harder to justify. Like the scene where he lies on Zack's bed, patting the mattress while saying, 'Zack, we need to talk, son.' Zack, visibly uncomfortable, replies, 'Mr. Belding, why are you in my room?' Or the time he barges into the girls' locker room to check on things, and Jesse screams, 'Mr. Belding.' This is the girls' locker room, while he awkwardly says, 'educational supervision.' That's all. It doesn't stop there. He once wrestled with Slater in his office while groaning, 'Come on, Slater, show me what you've got.' To which Slater sighed, 'This feels wrong.' The lighthearted and carefree tone of 90s children's television made these scenes seem much more innocent at the time. A former crew member admitted, 'We didn't think too far ahead back then. The goal was just to make it funny.' And it's that simplicity that has turned Mr. Belding into a character that adults now watch with a mix of laughter and mild discomfort. 14. The characters' names came from surprisingly weird sources. Few people realize that the familiar names at Bayside have amusingly strange origins. Mr. Belding, who sounds like a sweet, harmless principal, was actually named after an editor who caused producer Peter Engel no end of grief. Engel once said, "He gave me such a headache that I had to put his name in the show." Lisa Turtle's name came from a girl Engel knew as a child, while Slater was named after his son's school friend. Even A.C. Slater, a name that sounds effortlessly cool, actually stands for Albert Clifford. When Mario Lopez first heard this, he burst out laughing. "No way my character is named Albert," but Engel replied, "Believe it works." Jessie was also shocked when she found out about this and said, "We thought the writers picked names that matched our personalities. These seemingly insignificant names ended up being a big part of the Saved by the Bell charm." A writer once shared, "We didn't overthink it. If a name sounded catchy, we used it. And this spontaneity gave the show a quirky, endearing lore that fans now find oddly delightful." 13. No swearing on set. Among all the behind-the-scenes rules of Saved by the Bell, there was one that sounded simple on paper but drove the entire crew crazy. Absolutely no swearing. Producer Peter Engel said the environment had to stay as clean as a children's playground, even though behind the camera was a bunch of teenagers who occasionally couldn't hold it in. He recalled with a tired smile, "Try keeping 6 15 to 17-year-olds from blurting out a single curse word." I dare you. Plenty of awkward, funny moments happened because of that rule. During one intense scene, Mark Paul stumbled over his line and almost let out a curse. The director immediately yelled, "Cut, you can't say that." Mark Paul blushed, "Sorry, let's do it again." Nearby Mario Lopez teased, "I bet you don't talk that politely in real life." Lark Voorhees once shared, "Some days we filmed from morning till night. One slip of the tongue and we had to redo the whole scene. Sometimes the pressure was so much that they could only look at each other and laugh helplessly, knowing that one tiny mistake meant everyone had to start over." But that strict rule ended up shaping the show's signature atmosphere, bright, wholesome, and perfectly in tune with late 80s teen television. 12. The wild parties behind the scenes. Unlike the innocent Saved by the Bell portrayed on screen, the teenage cast's off-screen life was far more lively. Tiffani Thiessen once shared, "The first time I drank alcohol was in Paris, with Mark Paul. We thought, it's just one drink." Gosselaar vividly recalled sneaking into clubs at 16 due to his fame. The bouncer looked at me and said, "Oh, it's Zach Morris. Go ahead, kid." The cast often hung out together and sometimes had to remind themselves, "Hey, we still have filming tomorrow." Lark Voorhees joked, "Whoever drinks the most gets punished with early makeup call," while Mario Lopez nodded. But we always kept it under control. Nobody wanted trouble. Crew members said their energy was like kids who had just tasted fame and were testing their limits. After a late shoot, Gosselaar would ask, "Where now, sleep or midnight snacks?" and Jesse would sigh, "Snacks? I've got a serious scene to film tomorrow." They were rowdy but never out of hand, portraying the perfect image of kids entering Hollywood too soon, but staying somewhat on the right path. 11. The $1 Million Trick cast lost 30 years of rerun money. You could turn on Saved by the Bell on almost any channel over the past 3 decades. But what most fans don't know is that the cast didn't receive a dime from all those reruns. In his memoir, Peter Engel explained they signed teenage contracts, lacked experience, and no one explained syndication rights. Tiffani Thiessen once laughed bitterly. "We thought getting the role was enough. Who knew about rerun royalties?" Mark Paul admitted, "Back then, I just wanted to act. I didn't think about money." When asked how it felt, knowing the show earns millions every year, Mario Lopez Slater simply replied, "Well, good for them. Even merchandise profits posters, t-shirts, DVDs never reached the cast." A crew member revealed, commercially it was a goldmine, but the actors were too young to demand a share. However, few complained publicly. Jesse once said on a talk show, "We lost money, but we kept the best years of our youth. You can't put a price on that." 10. Dustin Diamond was shunned by his co-stars. There's a detail that only those who followed Saved by the Bell from the very beginning might have noticed. Dustin Diamond, who played Screech, gradually disappeared from all cast reunion photos. In the years following the show's conclusion, his relationship with his co-stars became so strained that many reunions didn't invite him. And even the iconic 1989 cast photo was edited to completely remove Dustin's image. A crew member softly explained, no one was happy about it, but things had just gotten too complicated. The distance began in the 2000s when Dustin published Behind the Bell, a book filled with negative stories about his co-stars. Mark Paul Gosselaar once said, "I read a few excerpts and just shook my head." Tiffani Thiessen shared, "We didn't recognize the person in that book. It wasn't the Dustin we knew." When Dustin appeared on a talk show to explain, he awkwardly admitted, "A lot of it wasn't written by me. I made a mistake letting it happen." Despite his missteps, Dustin remained an integral part of Saved by the Bell, an actor who grew up before the audience's eyes, bringing Screech's naive, clumsy, yet heartfelt charm to life. When he passed away at the age of 44, many cast members left quiet but sincere tributes. Mario Lopez, with tears in his eyes, said he was a part of our memories, and memories never fade away. 9. Bayside High. A recycled Hollywood set. The hallways of Bayside High, a supposed dream school, were actually a heavily reused set that countless other Hollywood productions also borrowed. A crew member shared, "As soon as one show wrapped, they'd repaint the walls, swap out the lockers, and another show would move in." The Saved by the Bell production team frequently arrived on set and asked, "Wait, wasn't this door green yesterday?" only for the set decorator to reply, "Disney borrowed it for something last night." Not only the new class, but shows like That's So, Raven and iCarly used the same hallway structure. New actors often arrived on set, looked around, and asked, "Isn't this Raven's school?" to which the director would laugh, "Hollywood kid." A technician reminisced, "We swapped classroom signs so quickly that if someone walked in mid-scene, they'd think the school was changing subjects every 5 minutes." This recycling wasn't due to a lack of creativity, but rather a cost-saving measure common in American TV at the time. Yet on-screen audiences believed this was uniquely Bayside's world. However, this was just the beginning, because sometimes even the cast themselves ended up in bizarre alternate universes created by Hollywood's strange practices. 8. Almost a different universe. When Urkel and Angelina Jolie nearly appeared at Bayside, there are casting choices where just one different name could have completely changed the tone of a show. Jaleel White, who later became legendary as Urkel, was originally part of the Miss Bliss version of the show. A crew member recalled that kid was smart, quick-witted, and just standing there, he drew you in. When he found out he wouldn't continue with Saved by the Bell, Jaleel reportedly said, "That's okay. I'll find another role," and then went on to create one of the most iconic characters in TV history. Even more surprising, Angelina Jolie was once considered for the role of Kelly Kapowski. During her audition, she exuded a calm intensity and sharp gaze, prompting one producer to exclaim, "This girl is too strong for Kelly." Another whispered, "If we cast her, this show will feel so much darker." Ultimately, Tiffani Thiessen was chosen for her sweet and wholesome vibe. Tiffani later reflected, "I heard Angelina was also up for the role. I think if they'd picked her, Zack probably couldn't get away with his childish antics anymore." These what-ifs lead fans to imagine what would Bayside have been like with Kelly radiating Jolie's energy, or with Zack having to outwit a quick-thinking Urkel. And behind these casting choices lies an even more surprising story, one related to the show's unforgettable opening theme song. 7. The surprising connection between the opening theme and Golden Girls. The upbeat Saved by the Bell theme song with its catchy "When I Wake Up in the Morning" vibe feels so youthful and energetic. But few know that the composer behind it also created Golden Girls' iconic "Thank You for Being a Friend." A musician from the team shared Scott Gale walked into the studio, sat down, and said, "Let me try something a little more lively." The sound engineer joked, "You just wrote music for women in their 60s, and now you're switching to teens." Can you handle that? Gale laughed. Music is all about emotions. After recording the first demo, someone behind the mixing board shrugged and said, "This sounds like a cereal commercial." Gale replied, "Exactly. Teens need that kind of energy." Mark Paul Gosselaar heard the final version and laughed. "This song is so fun, it makes me want to run to school right now." A music editor added, "We just wanted something instantly recognizable from the very first note." And they got it. Just a few seconds of the theme song were enough to signal the start of Bayside's world. But immediately after that catchy tune came a famous summer setting, and with it, a secret tied to a spot right next to Beverly Hills. 6. Malibu Sands was filmed right next to the 9. 0210. Set the Malibu Sands episodes made many fans believe the crew had relocated to a luxurious summer resort. In reality, the setting was filmed at Palisades Beach Club in Santa Monica, the same spot used by Beverly Hills 90210 for its beach scenes. A technician remembered, "In the morning, we'd film Saved by the Bell. In the afternoon, the 90210 crew would roll in, and we'd just smile and say, 'See you again.' One day, the 90210 team passed by, and a Saved by the Bell staff member joked, 'Hey, where's Brandon Walsh? Let Zack challenge him to a hair volume contest?' Years later, Tiffani Thiessen recalled, 'It was funny. I filmed Saved by the Bell there, and a few years later I was back for 90210 at the exact same spot.' Shooting at Malibu Sands always meant sunny skies, sunscreen smells, and ocean waves, but everything was tightly controlled. A crew member shared, "If the wind got too strong, we had to stop. If sand blew into the camera lens, everyone groaned. Meanwhile, the cast would change into their costumes in makeshift tents." Mario Lopez once joked, "Make sure the next scene puts me in the shade, okay?" But behind those bright summer days was a character who, originally, wasn't even supposed to exist yet became a crucial part of the show. 5. Jesse Spano was created at the last minute. Jesse Spano wasn't part of the original plan. When Elizabeth Berkley auditioned for Kelly and didn't get the role, the team faced a decision: let her go or create an entirely new character just for her. A writer shared she was smart, charismatic, and had a sharp perspective. It would have been a waste to lose her. Engel looked at Berkley and told the team, "We need someone like her in the group." When Elizabeth found out a new role had been written specifically for her, she exclaimed, "Really? I've never heard of that happening before." Jesse became the serious, socially conscious voice in a show otherwise filled with lighthearted fun. Behind the scenes, Elizabeth often reminded the cast, "This scene is about the environment. Let's not play it too casually," to which Zack would laugh. When Jesse gets serious, no one dares to joke. No one expected this last-minute addition to deliver one of the show's most unforgettable and controversial moments ever. But an even bigger change lay in the origins of the series itself, where everything was completely different. 4. Good Morning, Miss Bliss. The weird prequel, fans want to forget before Saved by the Bell, became a cultural icon. The series had a little-remembered prequel phase, Good Morning, Miss Bliss. The setting was Indiana, not California. Zack, Lisa, and Screech were still in middle school, and Mr. Belding was slightly younger. A former crew member recalled the entire set revolved around Miss Bliss. The kids were just side characters. When NBC decided to reboot it, they changed everything. Move the kids to high school scrap, Indiana dumped the old content, and start fresh. A writer remembered asking, "Do we need to explain this?" The head of programming replied bluntly, "No, kids won't notice." And so the Indiana era was erased as though it had never existed. Mark Paul Gosselaar later recalled, "Suddenly Zack went from an 8th grader to the king of Bayside High." Nobody explained why. When fans asked, Lisa would laugh, "We don't know when we moved states either." It was a bold, oddly simple decision, but one that laid the foundation for the Bayside High fans know today. 3. 2 original characters were completely different. Slater and Lisa. Few people know that in the original draft, Slater was written as a streetwise Italian kid, while Lisa Turtle was conceived as a Jewish princess from Long Island. Everything changed when Mario Lopez walked into the audition room. A crew member recalled, "We looked at each other and said, 'There's no way this guy can play the original Slater.'" For Lark Voorhees, the shift was even more dramatic. Producer Peter Engel watched her audition for just a few minutes before saying, "This girl has her own unique aura. We need to rewrite this character from scratch." Both actors brought a completely different energy to their roles, forcing the writers to scrap the original character profiles. A crew member said, "Within a week, Slater went from being a streetwise city kid to a joking, muscular Latino athlete." As for Lisa, a writer laughed. "She walked in and the whole room lit up. You couldn't write her as just a typical, fashionable rich girl anymore." This change not only gave the show 2 standout characters, but also made them rare examples of diversity on late 80s television. From this point forward, the cast began to take on the dynamic that would define Saved by the Bell. But to craft Zack Morris as the ultimate teen heartthrob, the production team made some extreme adjustments to the actor himself. 2. Zack Morris. The All-American Dream Boy was completely manufactured. Most fans think Zack Morris is the quintessential All-American boy. Blonde hair, bright smile, and effortless confidence. But in reality, this image was entirely created by NBC. Mark Paul Gosselaar admitted in an interview, "My hair is naturally brown. I didn't look like Zack at all. Every week he had to bleach his hair, a process so harsh that he joked, 'My scalp remembers the smell of chemicals more than my lines.'" A makeup artist recalled, "Some days his hair was so dry it felt like touching paper. Even Zack's personality wasn't entirely organic." Gosselaar explained, "I observed the popular kids at school, the way they walked, the way they laughed, the way they acted like they didn't care, and combined all of that. This mix became Zack Morris, confident, mischievous, and sometimes downright manipulative. A character who seemed perfect on screen was in reality a carefully crafted persona. And this artificial Zack remains a source of debate even today. However, the most controversial character in the show's history wasn't Zack. It was someone who appeared briefly, then disappeared without a trace. 1. The Tori paradox. The biggest TV mystery of the 90s. Anyone who watched Saved by the Bell during its original broadcast remembers the bizarre shift one day. Kelly and Jesse vanished, replaced by a leather jacket-wearing, tough-talking girl named Tori. There was no explanation, no transition, no goodbye. A crew member explained, "It was awkward, but the production schedule didn't wait for anyone. When fans questioned the sudden change, a writer simply laughed and said, 'It was 1993. Kids didn't ask questions back then. Tori was created out of necessity. Tiffani, Thiessen, Kelly, and Elizabeth Berkley. Jesse had scheduling conflicts, but NBC needed more episodes to meet syndication requirements.' Leanna Creel, who played Tori, recalled, 'They told me, you'll be their best friend. I asked, whose best friend I? They replied, everyone's.' The cast themselves were just as confused. Mario Lopez joked, 'One day I woke up and Zack had a new girlfriend. Oh, well, I got used to it.' When the graduation episode aired, Kelly and Jesse returned while Tori disappeared without a word. A crew member admitted, 'We felt bad, but it was already done.' To this day, the Tori paradox remains one of the most discussed examples of 90s TV's charming absurdity. And those were 20 behind-the-scenes secrets about Saved by the Bell that you might not have known. What about you? Which moment or character from this legendary sitcom do you remember the most? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you won't miss out on more fascinating stories from our childhood. See you in the next video.